Hambini fans, and welcome to another episode of Hambini demonstrates incompetence in the bicycle industry. No, that's wrong. Demonstrates engineering incompetence in the bicycle industry for fun. Starring today, well, not this bit anyway. We have, well, oh, fuck that. I'm rubbish with intros. Right, so today we have a Look 795 Aerolite. So this was sent to me by a bike shop from Cumbria. I will put a link to them below in case you want to buy one or whatever, or contact them in the description box below. And this is, well, we've had a load of 695s in, now we've got a 795. This actually is a lovely frame to look at. But anyway, it's come in for a bottom bracket because the person at the other end decided they wanted a bottom bracket designed by a 5-year-old. Cunt. That being me. And the objective of today's, what's the word? Project is to get, this was the normal crank that came with it, which is a Look Z2, to get one of these into it, which is none other than from the epitome of engineering excellence, if you believe it, a SRAM Quark, whatever it's called, Dub red crank. So that is like half of it. So let me zoom in and show you more of the shit. So, if you're new to this and wondering why I have a Disney princess blanket in the background, it's because Anyway, this is the Look 795, a BB65 bottom bracket. So that's 65mm on the aperture, and it's a 50mm bore. It's a bit weird because the crank is one piece, and one side is an interference and the other side is I'd call that a transition, but one's an interference on the outer race and this one's an interference on the inner race. You actually put it through in one go. This is, you know, widely regarded, certainly in my opinion anyway, as a very good crank design. I mean, it is so light. But anyway, so that's what that is. The one to go in it is this. So this is the Quark. Let me get the other piece. Actually, we'll talk about the frame first before we talk about that. So this is the frame. I mean, overall, I mean, it looks very good to the eye. This looks to be used. So there's a few little marks on it, and the chap's just put a dummy rear hub in. Obviously, he's put it the wrong way around, but it's only for transport. Yeah, you can see the aperture there without a bearing in it. Now there is, I mean, a couple of things with this. This seat post, I'm assuming it's been cut because the frame has been used, and it's also not completely straight, so that's why I assume it's been cut. Where it has been cut, it's exposed a few voids. So there's a void there, which must be, I don't know, 8mm, 7-8mm. There's a small void there, and a couple of small voids there. So, I mean, that is a pretty good aerofoil shape. Admittedly, by the time the air's hit this point of the bike, then it's debatable as to whether it makes a difference, but there's some voids there anyway. You can actually see some of the problems associated with making this teardrop shape for the manufacturer. So you need good compaction in the corner, so it's difficult to achieve. And then, well, what else is there? I mean, the headset looks all right. Maybe it's a bit scabby down there, which is a bit unusual for a Look bike, but nevertheless, I just wonder if they've gotten worse since they had the 695. But anyway, so that's 795. What else is there? The brakes are underneath the bottom bracket. Anyway, that's really about it. Right. The crank that's got to go in it is this. So this is a Quark Dub crank. Now, Dub in itself is a bit of an oddball. Well, it's a serious oddball. in these times when you want to have standardization, what SRAM have done is they've gone for this ridiculous, I say ridiculous, 28.99 millimeter outside diameter or bore of the bearing, however you want to look at it. And they've standardized on that, and they've standardized on that across their road bikes or road group sets and their mountain bike group sets. I think they're really going towards amalgamation. Now, if you ask me, they're trying to reduce their parts count, but then again, I am a cynic and I'm a 5-year-old. Now, when you're designing for this, the most obvious thing that SRAM have done is they've adopted a preload system that is much more akin to what Shimano have, which is a physical preload adjuster rather than a wave washer. So the GXP had a step in it and it had a wave washer. This has just got a physical, turn the dial round and you will adjust your preload. The other thing is I need to give you a little bit of an explanation as to a critical dimension that no one really talks about. Now, if you ever buy a Shimano axle, they are always the same size. They're basically 90.5 millimeters between what is known as the distance between crank arms, DBCA. A lot of people will talk about the spindle length, which is that, and it's a bollocks measurement. What you really need is the distance between here and the bit on the corresponding side. So what I'm trying to say is if you take this dub crank and then bolt it together, the other thing to note is on this dub crank, the locking mechanism is a tapered set of splines, which is just like GXP, but it houses the power meter system. So this is the distance between crank arms is, as you've tightened it, you need to tighten it to the recommended torque, which is either tight or fucking tight in this case. Oh no, model it tight. You need the distance between there and there. That is the critical distance. Now, the problem is, and the problem you face is often, as you're about to see, it is not easy. You just can't get anything in there to measure it. So how do you go and measure it? Well, there are a few options. The easiest way is to put something in and then measure the gap. So, for example, if I undo that, in fact, I'm going to take this off. Oh, can't take that off, we'll leave it on. We'll take it off later. We need to put something in between to measure. So what I'm going to suggest is you put a bit of tube. And this takes me to one of these tools that you really can't do without. So this is a Knipex Tubix pipe cutter. And the number is 903102 if you're going to get one. It is without doubt one of the best things that you can have for a bike. It's ideal for cutting steerer tubes down to size. Now, the advantage with this thing is the rollers are really wide, so you're bound to get it square. What you need to do is get a small piece of tube, and for this is actually an ideal tool. It's ratcheted, so you can move that up to where you want quite fast. Normally you're just turning that around forever, but this is like that. And you've also got a deburrer on the back, so overall really good. What you need to do is you need to get yourself a piece of tube and then a measured amount. So I'm going to make it, for argument's sake, 60-ish millimeters. So I'm just going to make a mark. Okay, it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. Onto there. Line this up. So to all intents and purposes, normally that is verging on a thick walled tube, but we're going to try and cut it with the Knipex. So I can see it coming through already. So it's cut it, and we can now use that to measure between the distance between crank arms. What we do need to do is clean that up, so we can use the debearing tool for that. So bear's all removed. Now it's time to use this. So there you go. So that is, I'm actually going to link to this in the description because this is probably one of the better ones that I've had. Right, so anyway, so we've got our finite tube, which due to my stupidity I've made slightly bigger, 62mm, but that's fine. We only need it as a reference. So we put that onto there. Put this in. Okay, so now we've got a spacer so we can measure quite accurately what it is. So that obviously can adjust, but 32mm. So basically the SRAM distance between crank arms for a dub in this application is 95, there or thereabouts. So this is a close-up of the BB65 in this bike, and you can see on the top there is a small amount of erosion, if that's the right word. I don't think this bearing is in the side has spun fully, but I mean it's in a peculiar place, put it that way. It's not normally at the top. However, there is also quite evident damage at the bottom. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get the bearing out from the other side. Now I'm just assembling a tool to get this out the other side, which is this. So we pop that onto there, and then these things are just spacers to make it less boring for you as I unwind it. So that sits in like that. Pop this on top of it, and then get another handle and screw it down. So it should self-center. I think that is out. So there we go. That's that bearing removed. This is just what it looks like afterwards. So the bearing's literally just popped out. On this side, there's absolutely zero evidence of any spinning. It looks like it looks perfect. So that's really quite a good thing. Here we go. Let's hit the record button on there, and it's PowerPoint time, bitches and Hambini haters who can all go and fuck themselves. How do I get this fucking thing off? Right. Time to check the pen. Fuck, it's not working. The pen wanks. Right, let's go. I'm so excited with this one. I was expecting a useless fucking piece of shite and was not disappointed. Yes, no, I was at the This is just pure PowerPoint orgasmic sex. By Hambini, aged 5. If anyone reports me for underage, whatever, I am aged 5, but I don't maybe need reporting and all that shit. Right, fuck. Have I clicked on the wrong button? Remember, Hambini Age 5 merch you can get on my website. Where's the next button? Oh, fuck. Right, okay, right. I have put on here, because I transcend continents, you know, I'm huge in Europe, I'm massive in North America, I haven't quite cracked Africa yet, and I'm moderately massive in parts of Asia, and I'm fucking huge in Australia too. I thought I would give some people a bit of an education. Now normally it's an aerodynamic education because those fuckstains really do need an education. But today I've got this extra slide called Engineering Dictionary for the Dentists. So I've got like a word and then the translation for the dentist. So the first word is cunt. Now a cunt is an affectionate name for a fellow colleague. So a standard greeting in the engineering profession is, all right, cunt, how are you doing, cunt? Hello, cunt. It is an affectionate name for, you know, a fellow colleague. That's not to be confused with, all right, fucking cunt, because fucking cunt is a really affectionate name for a colleague for when you fuck the cunt, for you fuck the colleague, yeah? Not fuck the colleague over, because that's different. That means you're going to shaft him and get him to do something wrong so that you can be better. So there is a difference. So there is cunt, fucking cunt, and well, I've forgotten the last one. Shafting a cunt. Getting shafted. Yeah, getting shafted. Yes. We'll save shafting for another day. Right, a fanny. Now, in North America, a fanny, I think, means something else. But in the engineering world, it is a bell end who pontificates and sits around proclaiming intelligence while himself being unable to do anything. So, quite a lot of them are actually in the comments box below. So you'll find the odd twat who comes along and says, oh, that Hambini's machined a bottom bracket wrong. Well, you know, if I have machined a bottom bracket wrong, well, go and machine one yourself and then show it to the world. So that is a fanny, as opposed to a fucking fanny, because that's different. Right, right. Yes, to all of my North American friends, it is not Sandra Bullock, okay? She is somebody else. It is the dog's bollocks, or the mutt's nuts, yeah? The nuts of the dog. They are so good, the dog licks them, yeah? That's what it means. That's why it is the mutt's nuts. It is a verb, adjective, for something that is good. Nat's cock. Now this is a very localized expression for a very small distance. It is about 0.05 millimeters, which is 0.02 of an inch, there or thereabouts. And then we come on to the most controversial one, the bitch, right? The bitch is a colloquialism for the apprentice. Now the apprentice, usually we'd make them do something, you know, slightly stupid on their first day. It's called an engineering initiation. Normally that involves sending them to stores who we've already phoned up beforehand, or phone up en route and say, the apprentice is coming along, please make sure he has a long stand. So what we do is we send the apprentice along, because, you know, they're not like streetwise or anything like that, and say, Jimmy, please go to the stores and ask for a long stand. So they go to stores, ask for a long stand, and just sit round there for fucking ages. Well, sorry, stand there for ages because they've had a long stand. Another one is glass hammer, tartan paint, sky hooks. That's a favourite one. Also, part of the initiation of the apprentice is, well, the one we used to do, but then HR got involved, is on overalls, we used to bring the crane down and then hook them up to the back of the overalls and then lift them. But apparently if you do that for long enough, they'll die.
So we never got to that point, but we did get bollocked a few times for doing it. So we had to stop. And then what we did was we used to drop them down just so their little feet were touching the floor. We used to leave them there. It's like, yeah, it's a variation on giving them a belt to chew on at lunchtime. Right, an overview of the problems we've got. Right, so the Lux 795 uses a BB65 bottom bracket. It is a 6810 bearing. It is quite prone to spinning. I've seen a few of them where it spins, and it uses a Z crankset. If you have a look at my other look video, it'll go through that in detail. So, you know, have a look. It's got a 50mm bore. Now you can tell that from this. So if you do 10 times 5 equals 50. So you just multiply the last two digits by 5 and it gives you the bore size. The 6 means it's a ball bearing. 8 is number 2 in the size. It's basically the outside diameter. For some odd reason, which I still don't understand, the bearing numbers start at 7. So the first digit just means deep groove ball bearing, but then the next digit starts at 7 and then it's 8, 9 and so on. So digit 2 is a much more heavier duty than an 8, so that's what I meant. So if I say 6210, that is a beefy bearing because that 2 means it's a big ball. Right, then we have SRAM DUB. Now this hasn't been on the market for all that long. It uses, I mean, fucking hell, a 28.99mm axle. Someone was taking the piss in the marketing department. 28.99. Fucking hell, the tolerance range on the bearing is probably going to be 29.01. In fact, I'd hazard a guess that they're all 29mm, so that's what they're going to say, because SRAM tolerances, they can't get to 0.01mm. I've seen some of their stuff vary by 2 or 3mm. Anyway, right. The distance between crank arms can vary, and I'll come on to what that is in the next slide. Is it the next slide? Yeah. So we'll come on to that. DBCA is the critical measurement. It supersedes GXP. So GXP has been dropped, and SRAM's just does this dub, 28.99. I think they've done it so that they can unify across mountain bike and road, and one other reason, which is this reason. So BB86, which is, have I got a BB86 bottom bracket? Yeah, this one. Right, well, due to my incompetence, the memory card got full. So we'll resume here. Right, the reason, well, have I got a BB86 bottom bracket? Oh, fuck. I do have a BB86 bottom bracket. This is a BB86 bottom bracket. Now Shimano have designed this to stop you using a 42mm bearing inside it, so they made it 41mm. Now the reason they've done that is to sort of make it very difficult for anyone to use a 30mm axle. So if I clear the pointer options, erase all link on slide. Right, I've got some pictures here of what happens. So you've got this bearing here, which is your typical, that's a 6805. And that is your typical bearing that I use inside bottom brackets designed for Shimano axles, so 24mm axles. This one is a 6806. And that is the original BB30 bearing. So if you go back to the business where I said about the last two digits multiplied by 5, if you do 06 times 5, 6 times 5 gives you 30mm. So 05 times 5, 5 times 5 gives you 25mm. So that's the bore of that one. So that's 25 and that one's 30. Now, in order to fit a 30mm axle in the same space as a BB86, you need to use this bearing. okay, or a derivative of it, and that is a 6706. So the 6 is a deep groove ball, like all the others. The 7 is the first number in the series, so it's the smallest one you can get. It's very, very slender, and then 06 is your 30mm. I mean, you can clearly see, oh fuck, it's really, really thin, and it's also thin in the B dimension, it's called. So the B dimension, oh fuck, the B dimension is that dimension, so it's the width, compared to the standard. That one's, well, a 6806 or a 6805 are both 7mm, so you can see the difference. You know, that's a pretty robust bearing. That's 7. That one I think is 4. It's not a very popular bearing. NTN and SKF. NTN certainly don't make it. SKF do make it, but it's a ball ache to get, and FAG make it. Now, you might think, well, what's all this got to do with anything? Well, BB8, in terms of bottom brackets, BB86 and BB386 Evo are the dominant press fit standards. The manufacturers are just going towards that. There are a few exceptions. Cannondale have kind of stuck with PF30. Canyon is, I think, exclusively BB86 or BB92, even across their MTB range. Most of the others are BB86. Notable exception is Cervelo and Factor, so they use B-Bright, and I mean the standards on B-Bright are appalling, so I won't go near that. And that's it. They really your standards. So BB386 Evo, which most people call BB386, and it's 86.5 by 46, and then BB86, which is 86.5 by 41. So they're your two dominant standards. The reason why BB86 is so popular is because it's a Shimano standard, and given they can do almost what they want, and they've tried to preclude or try to exclude people from using 30mm axles, that's what happens. So that's where this 28.99 comes in. You can actually fit a slightly bigger bearing in if you've got a 28.99 or 29mm bore. You can go to a slightly bigger. It's still crap, but it's slightly better. I mean, you would have to be completely fucking bananas to fit a 30mm axle in a BB86 bike frame. It is just ridiculous. Really, really ridiculous. From an engineering perspective, there's loads of companies that sell BB30 to BB86, well, 30mm to BB86 bottom brackets. I don't, but that's because, you know, the C rating on those bearings is utterly appalling. Right, let's move on. Distance between crank arms, and this is a fairly critical measurement. So, I mean, for a long time, people have gone on about spindle length. Spindle length is utterly useless, and I'll show you what that means in a second. And it is the distance, well, DBCA is the distance between the two arms, which is the critical length. So here we have just a drawing. So it's a drawing of a crank, and if we zoom in, what we've got is the axle length, which is effectively your DBCA, is the distance between the bit that you can't get to, that I just showed you, and that. It's basically the bearing spacing, okay? What a lot of, I don't even know why the fuck they do it, crank manufacturers do, is measure from like one side all the way to the other, yeah? And they call it the spindle length. The spindle length doesn't matter, because it matters how much your non-drive side crank arm bolts up. So if it goes, let's for argument's sake, say your spindle length is 100 millimeters. Okay, if your crank arm bolts up 10 millimeters, you are left with 90. Okay, this measurement can vary. Okay, so if it's 11 or 12, it's going to change this measurement here, and that means it may not fit your bike. A prime example of this is FSA. So FSA, the spindle lengths and consequently the distance between crank arm lengths can vary. And for that specific reason, I haven't even put it on this little chart here, but for Shimano, it's around 90mm, the DBCA, or 90.5, 91. It's variable. You can adjust it on a Shimano. Rotor's about 95. BB30 short, which isn't very popular anymore, is 68. So that bit there would be 68. And then BB30, the newer ones, are all extended length, and they tend to be 92. So you can see obviously you can fit a 92mm into an old bike, but you can't fit a 68mm, so the short version, into a bottom bracket that's designed for the wider stance. So this is basically BB386 Evo's preferred. So the wider stance. But it's just a fucking disaster. I don't know why these fucking crank companies do this, but anyway. Right. When you're measuring the distance between crank arms, the key thing is you're going to have to put a tube over your axle to get it to a point where you can get something in there to measure. I mean, I suppose you could use a ruler if you can get it in, but I've never been able to get one in accurately. When you do cut your tube, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important that you have a roller that's wide, because otherwise you start tramlining and then you can almost spiral your way down it. So you want to get one that is wide. So I've said wide width. For 25mm and smaller axles, 28mm copper works quite well. And then for the wider axles, so the 30mm axles, 32mm polypropylene. If you're in the States or somewhere which is like inch, I think it's only the States now, I don't know about Canada, which is inch derivative, I think that's 1.25 inches. Because in imperial pipe you measure the bore, whereas in metric pipe you measure the outside diameter. But anyway, right, a few people have asked me what I recommend, and the one I recommend is the Knipex Tubix. So that's the one that's pictured here. It's a very good cutter. I've used them for a while. It's really good for steerer tubes and seat posts and things. And then once when I had to chop someone's handlebars up for a hill sprint thing, or what the hell that was all about, I use them. So they're really good, so I'd recommend that. And then someone else in a previous video asked about which vernier I use. Now, I call them verniers. Lots of people have pulled me up on it and said they are actually calipers. Well, go fuck off. It's my YouTube channel. The recommended number is a 500-196, so that's what I use. And then you really need to make sure that the crank is fully torqued up when you do it. So, because it can pull it further up. Right. Dub now adopts the same sort of bearing arrangement as Shimano. So the preload adjuster is okay on a Shimano crankset. It's like it's an actual bolt, but the same kind of principle, same kind of end result, end game you're trying to achieve is the same with Dub. Most 30mm axles are the same as well. I'm not sure if there's some patent around it. To be honest, I haven't checked because I couldn't be bothered. GXP previously used to use a fixed non-drive side bearing with a wave washer. So this bearing here used to take all of the axial load. Now there has been some dispute over whether I got this right or not. And then I would refer anyone who doesn't believe me to look at the SRAM threaded GXP bottom bracket, because it does not use a wave washer. So all of the load, the axial load, goes through one bearing only. Radial load is on both sides, but axial load is on one load only. There is, well, I've just pretty much said this, so no need to repeat myself. And I said that as well. So I've put these in the wrong sequence. Fucking hell, never mind. There's a step in the shaft which locks the bearing up. Okay, then we need to go to, let me just get this ready. Oh, fuck. BB65. Please bear with me. Right. When you design the bottom bracket, which is what I've had to do here, you have to design, in this case, for a non-standard bearing. So it was 29 millimeters. I mean, I don't know if I don't know. I honestly don't know. Where the fuck did I put that file? Shit. Ah, fuck. I appear to have lost the file. Fuck. Oh no, I found it. Right, I'm just bringing up the 3D. Right, the thing that I can tell you for sure on this is the adjuster is crap. It needs to be metal. That adjuster is garbage, so I'm sure there'll be an aftermarket for it. Not sure when, but I'm sure there will be. Oh. Where's my fucking PowerPoint gone? Right. There we go. Right. SRAM axles vary in length. You know that distance between crank arms on a SRAM axle, I've seen them vary by 3 millimeters. Now, if you look in the SRAM manual, I think mainly for GXP, they said if it doesn't bolt up, put some more grease on it and then tighten it up some more. What kind of instruction is that? The other thing is not so much with the SRAM crank itself, but with the practicalities of it. So the SRAM front neck uses this like yawing system, so it's not moving parallelly. It's moving at an angle and moving parallel. So it's got a degree of rotation on it, whereas the Shimano and the Campag mechs tend to just move parallel, so they're just moving in one plane. To allow for that, it is better to make the bottom bracket slightly narrower than it needs to be and then put shims on it. I mean, putting shims on is not ideal because each time you put a shim on, the shim itself, when you get into thin shims, they act like springs. It's because when you shave the material off, and you know, a 1/2 mil shim has some residual stress in it. So when you put it up together and put loads of these, they act like springs together. And you tend to have to readjust it over time, maybe once every couple of months or something, but that's what happens. That's what happens. Now, the Look frame is a bearing fit. So it's an N7, depending on the type, it's an N7 on one side and a H7 on the other. So it's interference on one side, which is that side. H7 is a clearance, or very, very close clearance on that side. Right, so let me show you the 3D. Right, this is the 3D. So this is the bottom bracket. Now, this is I mean, all of my BB65s look the same because the interface points are the same. Now, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, where do the Di2 wires run? Well, that's the outside of the bottom bracket, there and there. The Di2 wires can run in that space that's there. If I cut this, so what we've got is all of my bottom brackets, apart from the BSA bottom brackets, are unibody, so the bearings are aligned between themselves. This purple ring is there as a locking ring, so that locks the bottom bracket in. So the bearings are 6806, and then there's a 29mm top hat to go in to interface it. And then from that you can add a couple of shims if required to give you the adjustment range. I mean, the adjustment is key. So that is how that works. There's not really much more I can say about that, other than the design is fairly well proven. So so that's what I've gone with. Even Look main dealers use these. So that sort of speaks for itself. Right, let me get rid of this. And then bring this back up. Right, here we go. The cunty shitbag scale of engineering fuckwittism. So we have the lick. The shiz, not a shitbag, borderline shitbag, definite shitbag, cunty shitbag, and a speck of shite on the anus of humanity. As always, the drug of the week, nandrolone. My Look KG386, which has now moved towards the lick. Then we have fucking a goat, obviously. Les's grass. The Look 695. My Zip 808s, which are in borderline. I mean, they're shit. Absolute shit. Now I've seen something that's a bit better. Oh, fuck. Right. I'm trying to get my pen back. But I'll let you see which ones were coming up. Fuck. Right, pen. Right. So, Nandrolone, My Zip 808s. I'm going to get rid of them. I think they're wank. Right. Oh. Macron. Fellow Frenchman. Allez le bleu. Putain. Demet. Right, Belinda, she's off the scale. I'm trying to convince her to come on the show. I hope she doesn't watch this. In fact, I'm not going to even mention stuff like this when I go and try and get her on the show. And then we have, well, we've got them together really. Spreadsheet wankers, aka sports scientists and wannabes. What do? They annoy me because they just read papers all fucking day and then quote them at me. Oh, I disagree with your statement that wind tunnels, that the data we get from wind tunnels is bollocks. Okay. On what grounds? Well, I read it in a paper. That's like me saying, I believe the world is flat because I read it in the fucking Guardian. Or more like the Daily Mail. Anyway. The intelligence of blow bitches. Yeah, fucking fruitcakes. Right. On the lick scale, we have the chap I can't understand from Cycling Tips. I don't know what his name is because I can't understand him, but he is hilarious. I don't know what his name is. He's the right hoot, so I like him. This week's Look 795. Now, I don't think Look 795s, certainly the ones I've seen, are anywhere near as good as the 695. In terms of build quality, I mean, you might say, well, in terms of aerodynamics and such, then the 795 might be better. I don't think it is, because the aerodynamics of the bike really aren't, the frame aren't as much of an importance as the handlebars and the wheels especially. So, but this, yeah, the 795, didn't really rate it this week, but there we go. And then finally, we have SRAM DUB. Now, it is an improvement on GXP, without doubt, but it has some real quirks, and that adjuster is just a fucking piece of shit. It is terrible. Such fine threads on plastic, they need to be metal. I don't know if that's been driven by cost, or if it's been driven by people who want really lightweight bikes. So, I mean, how much are you going to save in there? Or a gram or two? Don't know. Anyway, right, that brings us to the end of the PowerPoint. Let me take you back.
First thing we need to do is we need to spray a bit of activator in the board. Wait for that to go off. Just clean the rest off. Now, I do get lots of questions from people asking, where does the Di2 wires go? In this case, in here, so that's where the Di2 wires go, in this bottom bracket. So there's a cavity there. So if I get the other side, so that goes on like that. So you've got space in between. So it's actually quite a large size for that to go. I'm just putting some medium strength retaining compound into the bores. Don't think it needs it, but we'll do a belt and braces job. So I've just got it started, and now we can complete the pushing in process. And it should just bottom out like that. So now it's fully in. Now the only thing that remains is to assemble the crank. Now I did mention previously that adjustability is the key with SRAM, because you don't really know what you're going to get. So these are the insert cups, so they take it down to 29mm, and a set number of these shims to give us the adjustability. So the bike mechanic can, if he decides, move the chain line from one side to the other. So I'm just going to put these on to, I'll put them on the crank side. So we'll put that through first. Okay, so that's through. We've wound that all the way back, and then all that remains is we need to put some shims on. Well, actually, we'll try it without, because he may not require them. No, I think it is going to require them. Oh yeah, definitely going to require them. So there is a bit of adjustment on here, but I don't think it's enough, because you can see the movement there. So we'll move this out just to see where it goes to. Oh, actually he's taking it up. That's probably too much. Yeah, so we need to put some shims in. So let's do that. Put a wadge in, probably is too much, but you get the idea. Not quite happy with that. There's a tight spot. Let me investigate. Okay, so I found the problem. The actual problem was really small. The preload adjuster lock nut was a bit too loose, so I tightened it up a bit, and now you can tighten it without too much issue, and then nip it up. And then away we go. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. So there we go. It's not, I mean, the thing with the SRAM is you really need to have the adjustment, because you don't know what you're going to get. And that's it, really. And here's a spin test, because everyone loves a spin test. There we go. Right. And that brings us to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed the installation of a SRAM Red BB Quark crankset in a Look 795 frame. The bottom bracket itself, I mean, I don't know, the thing with the SRAM is the dub is definitely a step up from the GXP, but it's still got these quirks. It's 29mm axle, and I'm not too keen on the preload adjuster. I don't think that's going to last. Obviously we've had a few little tinkerings with it, but it's made of plastic, and I think it needs to be made of something a bit stronger than that. I imagine there'll be an aftermarket for that. As always, if you've got any comments, queries, questions, all of that stuff, please use the comment box below. I do look at all of your comments. Unfortunately I can't answer them all, but I try my best. So whack that subscribe button, whack the like button, and until next time, thanks very much. Oh, and keep it hanging loose.